In order for us to grow individually and as a whole, these conversations are necessary. Let's get it. Hey, y'all, welcome back to Empowering Real Talk. It is your girl, Kisha, aka Coach K. Thank you so much for tuning in. Listen, you guys know I like to have the conversations that are so necessary, and Empowering Real Talk is definitely the platform to make that happen. And I am here with a lovely guest also to share in that raw, uncut, unapologetic, but necessary conversation. So I'm going to allow her the honor of introducing herself. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, Kisha. I'm Barbara McAfee, and I'm coming to you from near Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I am a quote unquote midwife for voices.
I love if those that listen to me, my listeners know that I love to be very vocal and speaking about things that help us grow. And reading your bio and listening to a couple of your videos and your TEDx, and I was like, yes, I am so honored to have you here on Empowering Real Talk. So thank you for being here.
My honor. Thanks.
Absolutely. So please share a little bit about yourself, a little bit of backstory, and what got you to where you are today. I'd love to hear it.
Oh my goodness, it's such a wild ride. Everybody's like, oh, how'd you get here? And it's like, you take a plate of spaghetti, throw it on the floor, and that's kind of the path.
I honestly
Hi.
can relate to that more than people know, trust me.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't like I know I'm 17 years old and I think I'm gonna follow this path. It came through, like a lot of us, um, a wound. And I had a lot of vocal nervousness. I grew up in good singing, good choirs, lots of family members who were solo singers. And it was my worst fear. I wasn't going to ever do it. I would rather stick myself in the eyeball with a sharp stick. So, and I got kind of mad about that because I thought, like, what's my problem? Always a nice
Yeah.
question. And so I started doing some therapy and singing in public as a jazz singer the same
Mm,
week, which is sort of bizarre. That was not on purpose, but the soul has its way.
it definitely
And
does.
I started uncovering some of the patterns that were interfering with my really being able to fully express, not just in singing, but just say what I was mine to say. And, I was raised to be well behaved like a lot of people, and I got over it. So I found some great
I
teachers
love it.
along the way who really invited me into not just speaking or singing, but into sound.
Yeah,
And that is what changed the
yeah.
whole story.
I love that. Oh my goodness, I love that you touched on that because really, I think myself, I've always been, and people have always called me loud, right? But I was loud not saying or doing anything. I just was
Yeah.
loud. And I didn't realize what I was going to be doing here now as far as like speaking on platforms and podcasting and all of that. I just was loud for no reason at all. But coming from a healing perspective and like really putting in the work to really discover who I am as an individual, but what I'm destined to become, it was like you're supposed to be loud, but let's use that loudness to make an impact. And it just sounds
Right.
like, and just reading more about you, that's exactly what you did too.
That's true. And our voice and our gifts are so connected
Yeah.
because, generally people come out under and
Yeah.
everything else we create comes out through our voice, whether it's a podcast or a business or a relationship, a family, a
Mhm.
community, a place of worship, anything. Everything that happens in this world is based on some kind of a conversation.
Mm,
And what gets me up in the morning and what's got me, like, training up. I think there are 75 people trained in my work now around the world, with
I
more
love
more
it.
coming this year, is that so often people are missed because they're too loud, they're too soft, or we're talking across differences and
Mm,
we can't read each other's intentions
yeah.
accurately. And so having more choices vocally and being able to listen and speak with more intention makes it more possible for us to get our gifts in the world and make
Yeah.
things happen in a good
Yeah.
way.
I agree with that. And honestly, like from the vocal perspective, but also from our emotional, even in our professional and our personal matters, because I know that everything starts from the personal perspective because we've got to discover who we are first. and how we're going to speak. And, even with our voice, I know that that doesn't always mean the words that are coming out of our mouth per se, but it's also the impact that we're trying to, make and lead. I feel like sometimes, and which is what prompted me to start coaching and launching upgraded mindsets, is because people just don't feel that their voice is enough. They shrink it, they dim their shine, they don't like congratulate themselves, right? And we are kind of societally trained to kind of do that. What's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, heavens, I'm from Minnesota. Although although the and listen, although lately we've gotten some good attention for the parts of us that are firm
Right,
and strong, so
right.
I'm super proud. But yeah, we're all trained, we're all living in this tiny little story about ourselves that is not true, and it was formed by cultural norms, generational trauma, our own biography, something somebody said to us when we were 8, commercials, the media, all the things. And all of that gets glommed onto our bodies, our identity, and our voices. And I think we deserve to be whole while we're here. That's what we're doing here. We're in school. And so I've learned a lot through a lot of different methodologies, a lot of therapy, coaching, different I was a leadership development person for 12 years. I did organizational change. So I've learned a lot of methodologies
Yeah.
for transformation. What has surprised me the most about the voice is a bunch of things, but one is how darn fun it is.
Mm,
You can learn and grow and expand while you're laughing like a
yes.
hyena, why not?
I agree. I
Yeah,
love that. I love that. It's the
yeah.
facts. There were things that I just did not realize that I really liked because of the suppressed side of things. There are things that it's like now I'm like, I always like to do that, but I was scared to say it, for whatever reason. And now it's like, man, I don't care if you like it or not. It's not for you, it's for me.
Right.
So being able to kind of like put that into perspective, and I love we're talking about that because I feel like sometimes some common habits, are unintentionally designed to weaken our voices, but it really involves us becoming mindful of those things so we can work to change those. And I know you kind of help individuals do that. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, I do a bunch of different things, a lot of it online. One of my favorite things is full voice
Mhm.
fundamentals, which is like the entry point into my approach to voice, which is the 5 elements framework. So I take the voice past speaking, past singing into sound and kind of divide it up into 5 distinct elements: earth, fire, water, matter, and air. And
Mm,
each one correlates with a part of the body, and we play with all of them and kind of welcome them all home. And then they all have different applications. So you were talking about being like told you were loud.
mhm.
Well, that's fire. We are both fiery women, I have to say.
I love it.
And and that represents passion. And it helps us take up space. We can be seen and heard easily. And it also is really good for waking up the body, the physical.
Yeah.
However, fire sometimes is not the most useful thing. Like, I had one guy who worked outside as a carpenter, and then he came inside, he had a big fiery voice, big loud voice, and then he came inside and he had to work with upset customers and also supervise people.
Mm,
So, "Fire, I've got
right.
some feedback for you on your performance." And people were like, "Oh," they were either terrified or worn out by him. And so he had a lot of other emotional range. His voice just didn't show it. And so
Mm,
he learned how to move more into some water. So if he had somebody on the phone who was really upset about something, he could say, "So tell me more about that. Can I
yeah.
help you with that?" So that's what I try to do with people is give them more vocal choices and flexibility and also to welcome different aspects of themselves back
Yes. I
through the
love
vehicle of their voice.
I love that. I think that's so critical. You know how we hear people say all the time, and I used to be guilty of this. Oh, that's just how I am. You know how I am. You know how I get. I feel like that puts us so much in a box
It
as
does.
individuals because just because you're like that doesn't mean you have to stay like that. And also, I want people to understand just because you're like that doesn't mean everybody around you has to accept that. But that might be a whole nother podcast, so to
Yeah, it
speak.
is.
But But, it's like really being able to understand that you can shift your perspectives on a lot of things. I had to do it. Really understanding that just because you believed this way for so long and your value systems were this way for so long doesn't mean that they still have to be. You owe yourself the evaluation process of figuring out if those things are still aligned with you. And I know that you help individuals figure that out. You just described it in that story because he coulda just defaulted to the one thing, but you gave him avenues of other things, and I know that he benefited from that because,
He
for
really
one, the
did.
perspective was shift, so I think that that's awesome, and I think that it's just so important that we really continue to teach and encourage others to really shift their perspectives. Now, if that's just how you are and you've done the work to figure that out, be unapologetic in that, but are you truly doing the work to figure that out? And I feel like sometimes some people aren't. They just say they are, but people don't like to get uncomfortable and really figure themselves out for real.
That's true, and I have to say, the work is fun, but I've also shed buckets of tears and walked
Facts.
shaking through, like, those stories. See, I think those stories are like they're just our ego or
Yes.
our and God bless our ego, it's
Yeah.
just trying to keep us safe. It
Yep.
doesn't mean any harm, and I used to be so mean about it. I'd be like,
Right.
"Oh, my ego." And it's like, no, it's like it's a dog that doesn't know the difference between the postal carrier and an intruder. It's
Yes.
just trying to keep us safe.
That's
Bless its
it.
sweet little heart.
Yeah.
And so to me, discovering how I'm wrong about myself, how my story is too small, feels like it has to be kind of a negotiation with that part of me to say, "Oh, honey, um, I'm gonna go
Right.
into this other place right now, and I'll be back.
Yeah.
It's okay." So it feels like it's more of a sweet partnership rather than "Shut up, sit down, shut up." It's like, "Oh, darling, I'll be
Right.
back. I'll be back. Mama will be back.
Mama will be back. I will be back.
Sit,
And when I'm
stay."
coming back, I'm gonna be a little more mentally healthier because I'm gonna be able to help you and support you, that internal person, as well as outside people too. I think
Correct.
I am such a self-critic, and that's
Mm,
something that I had to work on. Um, but I also realized where that came from, just years of suppressed emotions, trauma, all of those things play a factor in really embodying our voice from a mentally healthy perspective. I know what I had to do and I know what I'm still doing because one thing I understand at the power of my voice now is that I have become a lifelong learner. I'm always listening to other people. I'm always asking for insight. I'm always sitting at tables where I know people are ready to have those conversations. Is that something that you found yourself doing, as you endure on your journey?
absolutely. Well, the question, "How else am I wrong about myself?" has been that happened when I first met these teachers who opened me up into all these sounds, and they
Yeah,
just blew my story right out of the water,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
walked out this was back in my late 20s, and I'm in my 60s now, and I was like, "How else am I wrong about me?" And that question has really pulled me into some really interesting
I love that.
places.
That's a powerful question, and it
Yeah.
could be loaded or unloaded, but that is a very powerful question. I love that. That's probably
Mm,
a reflective question that I think I'm gonna ask myself after we get
mm.
done, so
Okay, well,
thank you for that.
enjoy that.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. I wanna ask you, like, cause you, like, do all kind of things. It's not just the conversations, but you also have, like, some techniques and something. And so, like, what would be, like, a practical technique that someone can use when they're really about to speak up, but maybe nerves are trying to take over, anxiety might try to, get in the way and stop that? Is there, like, some type of maybe, like, a beginner technique or a simple technique that you would probably recommend to anybody?
Well, as a graduate of the Stage Fright University,
Hello.
I was a hot mess for so many years. And so I wish I could say, "Oh, well, there's this one little technique and you'll just be fine." It's like,
Yeah,
no, actually, you just have to keep stepping up there again and again and again to get
I
over
agree.
being afraid and get more interested in what you wanna give the people rather than what they're thinking of you, 'cause they're not thinking about you, they're thinking about them. They're not paying
That is
attention.
facts.
Yeah, no, they don't care. They're just yeah, they're not
Yeah,
paying attention to you. And but in order to just, like, open up and wake up the voice, I really like to suggest people, like, make some sound, like, before they like, in their car usually. And a really quick way is to go through the 5 elements laughing. So I'll just show you really quick.
mhm.
So you can laugh like Santa. Oh, that's the earth. And then you can laugh like kind of an obnoxious, I don't know, Las Vegas comic. So there's that one. And then you can laugh like a British lady who's had a little sherry. So that's the water. And then a witch. So that wakes up all the resonators in your face. And then you can laugh like a baby.
Wow.
And so, I mean, that's just a quick thing. I don't care if you use the 5 elements or not, but I
Right.
think just getting out of the tiny little range that most of us live in.
Yeah.
So you can voice your yawn, or you can yell, or you can howl like a wolf, or whatever it is. But just get outside of
Yes.
the speaking and singing out into the realm of sound, and it'll
Yeah.
wake everybody, wake everything up.
Wake everything up. I love that. Just doing what it is that you gotta do for you. I love
Right.
the laughs, you guys. I love the laughs, you guys. Let us know in the comment section, when you're listening to this, what you thought of those laughs, because I thought they were pretty good. I wanna share or talk a little bit with you about authenticity, because I
Mm,
know you've been on this journey for a while, and in your, like, opinion and insight, do you see a lot of people authentic versus performing? And when I say performing, they're basically just acting like, they may be doing something, but really not. Can you kinda spot the differences? Like, I'll give an example, like, someone that's basically sounding confident, but you kinda see or hear that they're not actually being confident.
mhm. I hear this question a lot
Mm,
because when you step outside of your precious little story that's too small for you, that's the first thing. It's like, "Oh, this doesn't feel authentic to me." Like I work with a lot of people who are introverted,
yeah,
and I always think, and I'm right in the middle, so I kind of go both ways very far. And for them, really big self-expression is kind of like a second language or something. It's not going to be their first way of operating in the world, but they often have an incentive to learn how to do that. Need to learn how to manage people better. They want to be more outward when they want to be. And so I do think that fake it till you make it thing is a really good thing, but you got to be on your way somewhere. It's not about manipulating people, it's about connecting with people.
ooh,
And so the carrot, the dangling carrot is like, I want to connect. How can I connect with you? And a lot of times we know when we're not connecting. You can kind of see the kind of backing off and the dead eyes and the like crossing the arms, but most of us don't know what to do about it. We usually persist in what's not working. And so
mm,
to be able to play in all these different realms, then you, instead of saying, I'm going to be authentic to this little story, it's like, get a bigger story,
ooh, yes.
right? And then you can, I didn't like the air voice at all. I thought it was like fluffy and stupid. And I'm 6 foot two. I could never get away with that stuff. So it just wasn't for me. But,
Right.
but Uh, I healed a lot of things. There was some healing, a lot of healing that needed
Mm,
to
yes.
happen in order for me to like be that soft and that undefended and dreamy. And, it just made me not happy for a long time. But it's really helpful for when I want to tell a story. Let me tell you a story about that. Or I have an idea. Ooh, I'm interested in that. So I do think that that did not feel authentic to me when I started, but now I don't know who I'd be without that, and it brought a lot of healing.
I love I love that. It reverts back to the holistic self, like
Right.
really just putting all of those things into perspective so it can help us from a holistic standpoint. I absolutely love that. As we
Mm.
get ready to wrap up here, I'd love for you to talk to the listeners who know they're meant for more, but they just have that struggle. They want to step out, they want to maybe share a story, but they feel like it's too much, it's too messy, or it's not polished enough. And, as being on the TEDx stage, we know, what comes along with that. But I would love for you to like give someone maybe a first step who wants to share that story, but just feels like, oh, I don't want it to be too much, too messy, or it's not polished enough. It's not perfect enough.
Well, I do think, starting with the people who you know are gonna love you. That's one of the things I did with my stage fright. I'm also a singer and singer-songwriter and song leader and stuff, and so
Yeah,
I had one of the things I did was just gather people I knew would love me even if I threw up and fell down, right?
I love that.
And so I rented a little space, that had a piano, and I sat down and I said, "Here's the deal. I wanna just play some music, and if I start over 4 or 5 times, oh, well." So low stakes. Start with really low stakes. And then the other thing is as the stakes get bigger, in both of my TEDx talks, I actually fell in love with the process of practicing and refining. That became, like, the point, not the actual and now I do that with my concerts as well. The
Right.
practicing, I make something because of what it does to me as I'm making it. And then the concert or the TEDx or the whatever it
Yeah.
is like an artifact of what really happened, which is Barbara grew. And I practiced and I became more friendly with my songs or with my talk or what I really had to say. And so to me, we're a very product driven culture. It's about
Yeah.
making the thing. And it's like, no, the thing is not the point. The making is the point.
Yes, the journey
So
along the way. Oh, I
it
love it.
sure is. And then no matter what happens in that concert or TEDx or whatever, you've already won.
Yeah.
And so the stakes actually are kind of lower because you walking in going, I'm good.
Yeah. I'm
I'm
good.
good. I'm good.
I love it. I love it. And I think that that's so important. That's one thing that I had to like make sure that I remind myself, whatever journey I'm on, whether it's personally in my business, things like that is the goal is great, but it's making sure that I'm celebrating the journey along the way, celebrating the small wins, celebrating, the reroutes even, because everything does not have a straight path to get there. So really embracing and being mindful of all of that, that has really helped me over the years. So I'm glad that you touched on that as well. So
Mhm.
tell us a little bit more about your book, Barbara.
I have 2 now. I
Oh,
can't believe I had
please
I had
share.
I
Please
had another
share.
baby. So, my first book is called Full Voice: The Art and Practice of Vocal Presence. It's out on all kinds of platforms. I read the audiobook version of it, and it's paperback,
Nice.
and then I have a new book that just came out that's called Vocal Intelligence,
Oh,
which
nice.
is kind of aimed a little bit more towards leadership, and it just
Mhm.
has some it's also started as an audiobook, and it has about an hour of my music in there as well, which is kind of
Oh,
fun. So you
awesome.
hear me talking and you get to do some exercises, and the paperback version of that is coming out in March of 2026.
Nice. I
So
love it. I love it. I think that is awesome. So anything else that you've got upcoming for 2026?
well, just ongoing courses. I've got a full voice fundamentals class starting in the end of March, and those generally come, a couple times a year. And I lead some retreats around and about. Everything is made clear on my website.
Before we wrap up, Barbara, any words of encouragement, inspiration, or just some tips that you'd recommend to my listeners when it
I
comes
got a
to
little
just
song.
being themselves and just empowering themselves to their next level?
Yes, I do. I have a little song. It's one of mine based on a quote by the great Sufi mystic Hafiz. And it goes like this. I wish that I could show you. I wish that I could show you Whenever you are lonely, walking in the dark, I wish that I could show you the astonishing light of your being.
Awes Thank you. I
You see?
received that, okay?
Oh, absolutely, I hope you
I
do.
love it. Thank you so much for joining us here on Empowering Real Talk. Thank you so much for dropping so many gems for my listeners. I know that they are going to get great value and just continue to do what it is that you're doing. Make sure you keep us updated on everything that's going on with you, Barbara. And I appreciate you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. It was just a joy to be with you.
I agree. I agree. All right, guys, listen. The bottom line of it is you have the power to use your voice how you want to use it. Whatever it is, if it's singing, if it's advocating, if it's community, but also make sure that you start with you first because you guys know I tell you all the time the power lies within you. So once you're able to accommodate that, you're able to elevate that and become the best version of yourself and make a difference your way. All right. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you have subscribed to the podcast and the YouTube channel. Until next time, stay empowered.